What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to the Uncommon Mindset podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Today, I'm joined by Alan Stein. I'll just give you a brief background on who Alan is. Alan has worked with some of the highest performing basketball players on the planet, such as Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and more. He is one of the world's foremost authorities on what it takes to improve individual and organizational performance and leadership. Alan is a very successful keynote speaker and an author, and it's such an honor to have him on the podcast today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you. This will be a fun conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you, Alan. I just want to say before we start, I really love the work that you do because it doesn't just relate to basketball. It relates to everyday life as well, which is absolutely amazing. But a great place to start, I believe, would be to ask, how and why did you get into performance coaching, especially involved in a sport like basketball?
So basketball was actually my first love, and I fell in love with the game at 5 years old, the first time I ever played, and was able to play up through college. I played at Elon University down in North Carolina. And while I was a player at the end of high school and throughout college, I started to develop an equal love for performance training and strength and conditioning and nutrition and mindset. So when I graduated from college, I thought, what could be better than combining my original love of basketball with my newfound love of performance training? So I decided to become a basketball performance coach. And most of my responsibilities involved everything except for the actual skill acquisition. So I didn't work with players on shooting, passing, rebounding, defending, or handling the ball. I focused on bulletproofing their bodies against injury, improving their explosiveness and their athleticism on the court, and then certainly helping them be in the present moment and develop mental toughness. And I did that for almost 15 years, had an opportunity to work with some pretty remarkable players and coaches. And then 5 years ago, I decided to leave the basketball training space and become a corporate keynote speaker and use all of those lessons and rituals and routines and disciplines that I learned through basketball. And as you just said so perfectly, I now teach folks how to apply those to their work and to their lives in general.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I know that you've obviously worked with high-level athletes, best of the best, like I mentioned earlier. I know that you've worked with them, you work with some of them where they, 14, 15 years old, where they're about to become superstars, and you've also worked with superstars themselves, right? You've probably been asked this a million times to share this story, but just for the listeners that haven't heard it, can you just talk about when you met Kobe? What was that whole process like, and what did you actually take away from that yourself?
Be happy to. What I'll do is I'll kind of give the condensed Cliff Notes version, and then I'll recommend folks go to my YouTube channel and hear the full version of the story. So in 2007, I had a chance to work the first ever Kobe Bryant Skills Academy, and I had an opportunity to watch Kobe work out really early one morning. I mean, to the tune of 3:30 in the morning. And I remember as a coach, a young coach, being very surprised at the simplicity of the drills he was doing. He was doing very basic footwork and shooting mechanic type drills. And these were drills I had done with middle school age players. Now, he was doing them with an incredible level of intensity, an incredible level of focus and precision, but they were very basic drills. And this surprised me. So later that day at camp, I asked him why he was doing such basic drills. And he looked me in the eye and he said something that changed my life forever. He said, the best never get bored with the basics. And, that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given. And I try to stay true to that today. I try to take a look at the areas of my life that I aim to be exceptional. Certainly on the professional side, I want to be an exceptional speaker. I want to be an exceptional author. I want to be an exceptional podcast guest. On the personal side, I want to be an exceptional parent to my 3 children. I want to be an exceptional friend. So what I'm constantly doing is figuring out what are the basics and the fundamentals of the area that I want to excel in, and how can I work on those during the unseen hours every single day. And so I do my best. I'm certainly not perfect, but do my best not to deviate away from the basics and the fundamentals.
Yeah, no, of course. I know you're a big fan of Jim Rohn, right? And I love listening to Jim Rohn myself. He always says, what's easy to do is also easy not to do.
Hmm.
Would you say that's what differentiates world-class players to good players, or like even people in life, basically, like when with their jobs? Would you say that's what differentiates them, or is there other aspects involved in that as well?
No, that's probably a major cornerstone of that. It's I'm a huge Jim Rohn fan. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I've read, watched, and listened to everything he's ever put out. And, even though I never had a chance to meet him, his work certainly has had a profound impact on me. And, I think he had several of those types of sayings that were just, they were so clear and they were so basic, but so impactful and so true. And yeah, I mean, the things that high performers find easy to do, lower performers find easy not to do. And it's that little 1 degree shift that can make all the difference in the world. So I do believe that is kind of a cornerstone of leading not only a successful and high performing life, but a fulfilling life as well. And I kind of look at, that mindset of the things that are easy to do are also easy not to do as very similar to what Kobe shared about the basics. I mean, one could say that the basics are easy to do every day, but as most people know, they're also very easy not to do every day.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I know another person that you enjoy is Inky Johnson.
Yeah.
I listen to him as well, and he always says, because I'm bringing this up because I know that you mentioned this as well, and you mentioned it in your book, Raise Your Game, which is absolutely amazing, by the way. And what I'll do is I'll leave a link down below for the people if they want to go and check it out too, which would be amazing. But yeah, Inky says it's not about the outcomes, about the process. And when you mention that as well, what is meant by that? Like, why is it important to focus more on the process rather than the outcome, would you say?
Well, first and foremost, major shout out to Inky. I mean, he is one of the most optimistic, positive, hopeful, hardworking guys I've ever met. I mean, his energy is infectious, and I just think the world of him. He epitomizes that mindset that life is not what happens to you, it's what happens for you. And for those that don't know Inky's story, he had a pretty tragic football injury that derailed his chance of playing in the NFL, but he's now used that as a springboard and a gift to change millions and millions of people's lives. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Inky. And yeah, one of the major shifts I've made later in life is learning how to detach from outcomes and focus much more heavily on the process. It sounds kind of cliche and very motivational speakerish, but don't worry so much about the destination, focus on the journey. And, I try to apply that to my work as well. Now, I believe in having goals. I think goals can help give you clarity. I think goals can help provide direction. So there's nothing wrong with goals, but I believe that once you've set a goal, you can kind of go ahead and put it on the shelf and then put your attention on what are the steps needed to achieve that goal. What are the behaviors, the habits, the micro skills, the daily practices that will increase the chance of that goal coming true or reaching that goal? And that's where you need to put your focus. So don't worry so much about the outcome, but the steps to actually getting there. And I know it's a little bit of an overplayed, analogy, but I always think of a GPS, when you need directions to go somewhere. First and foremost, you have to know where you are. The GPS needs to know where you are at this moment. The GPS doesn't care where you were 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, or 5 years ago. It just needs to know where you are in this moment. And then it needs to know the ending destination. Where are you trying to go? And once it has those 2 points, and I believe those 2 points, each of us as human beings need to have as well. We each need to know where we are and have the self-awareness to know our strengths and our weaknesses at present. But then we also need to have a vision of where we're trying to go and who we're trying to become. But once you have those 2 points, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Now all you have to focus on are the step-by-step directions to get there. Take this right, in 2 miles, take a left, in 5 miles, get off on this exit. All you have to pay attention to are the steps. And if you follow each and every one of those directions and those steps, inevitably you'll end up at the destination. Now, what happens many times, especially with myself, because I'm not great with directions, if I take the wrong turn or I miss one of the exits, the GPS just simply reroutes. It says, okay, you went the wrong way. No big deal. Now we'll just find the new way to get there, and we'll course correct and we'll reroute. And it's the same thing with our lives. You know, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have lapses in judgment. You're going to take some wrong turns. And when you do, don't let that derail you from pursuing your goal. Just simply reroute and figure out a new way to get there. And I found that when you focus on the process, you actually reach more of the desired outcomes and goals than if you don't. So you still end up getting what you want, but it also makes the journey that much more enjoyable. And the last thing I'll say on that is, if you learn to love the work, and if you learn to love the process and the journey, then you've already won. You don't even have to worry about whether or not you reach your goal. You've already won because you're doing something you enjoy and find fulfillment in. So then the result simply becomes a byproduct of what it is that you love to do.
That's incredible. Wow. Wow, that is absolutely amazing. Yeah, no, I love that so much. And you mentioned a big thing there. You mentioned self-awareness. And I know that that's a part of your book as well. You talk about self-awareness. Can you just elaborate on that? Like, what do you mean by being self-aware?
Yeah, so self-awareness was chapter 1 of Raise Your Game, because I do believe it's the foundation to which everything else is built. And back to that GPS analogy, if you don't have your current location, then GPS can't work. It can't tell you where to go. You know, I mean, you can't give someone directions to Los Angeles unless you know where they're coming from, because to get to Los Angeles from Maryland is different than getting to Los Angeles from Chicago or from Austin, Texas. So it's important to know where you're starting so that you can have the correct flow to get there. And that's a big part of self-awareness. You know, I look at self-awareness as being two sides of a coin. The one side, which is the side that most people choose to be aware of, are your strengths, your talents, your gifts, your dreams, your hopes, your ambitions. It's what many people call, and I put it in air quotes, the good stuff. But what most people aren't as open or as courageous at looking at is the other side of that coin. You know, what are your weaknesses? What are your flaws? What are your fears? What are your insecurities? What are the things that, you know, your limiting beliefs? What are the things that hold you back? You know, and that's what people consider, quote unquote, the bad stuff. And the reason I put that in quotes is I don't believe that either is good or bad. You know, both of sides of that coin make up who you are as an individual, you know, and all of us have things on both sides of that coin. And it's important that we're aware of those things so that we can double down on our strengths, and we can also improve applicable weaknesses. You know, I think awareness is always key. The reason self-awareness is so important is you'll never fix something you're oblivious to, and you'll never improve something you're unaware of. So anytime you can bring something into your awareness, or you have someone that cares enough about you to help you see one of your blind spots, that's actually a gift, because now you are aware of something that you weren't aware of before, and you can take steps to improve it or take steps to continue to strengthen it. So yeah, self-awareness is always going to be the foundation.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hear that from like other people as well. Like I know you mentioned Gary V. Gary V talks about that a lot, which is incredible. Yeah, and I know that you also, in your book, you also talk about leadership. So what would you say are the key aspects of being a great leader? Obviously, I'm involved in mixed martial arts. It's an individual sport, but we have a team, and our team are amazing, and our leaders, our coaches, they're amazing because they create this culture that in our gym, which makes everyone respect everyone. The communication is brilliant between each other. So what would you say are the key aspects of being a great leader?
I would say number one, without question, is caring. Is caring about the people that you're leading, is caring about your team or your business or your organization or your martial arts studio, is caring about improvement, is caring about being of service of others, you know, caring about the community at large. So I think caring is always going to be at the epicenter. A leader also needs to be able to model the types of behaviors that they want to see in those that follow them. It can't be do as I say, not as I do. If you're going to expect it of your people, then you have to expect it of yourself. So if you, as a leader, if you want your team to be prepared and enthusiastic, then you need to be prepared and enthusiastic. And I think arguably the best advice to give a leader is be the type of leader that you'd like to follow. Same thing with being on a team, be the type of teammate you'd want to play with. And when you can kind of embody those characteristics and qualities, then I believe you're moving in the right direction. And, leadership is so all encompassing. I mean, leadership also has to do with, sticking to your core values and not wavering from those core values. But at the same time, being very open to feedback and an active listener and flexible enough that you can constantly change, your strategy. You can change the way you do things, but you don't change your core beliefs and your core values. Those need to be solid, like an oak tree, whereas, your actual strategy and execution can be more like a willow tree. It can be a little bit more flexible, so you can make those types of changes. So, we could probably do a 3-hour episode just on the qualities of effective leadership, but those are the first few that jump out immediately to me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah. And Alan, what would you say are your goals at the moment? I know that you've obviously gone into keynote speaking, you're an author, you've got 2 amazing books out at the moment, Raise Your Game and Sustain Your Game, incredible. But have you got any long-term goals you've set yourself or any short-term goals?
And this will work out perfectly because this will piggyback on everything that we've talked about before. So, I've been in the speaking game for 5 years, and my goal from a speaking standpoint, and this will be my North Star, kind of the next area that I'm putting into my GPS, is to make what's called the $1 Million Speakers Club, which means I'll make $1 million in 1 calendar year just from keynote speaking fees. And I'm guessing I'm about 2 years away from that. I've been making some really great progress. The pandemic certainly caused me to reroute a little bit because it changed the way that I was delivering my programs. So my goal is to be in the $1 Million Speakers Club. Now, just to make the math easy, that would be doing 50 engagements at $20,000 at a $20,000 speaking fee. And like I said, I feel like I'm on pace to hit that in about 2 years. So now that I have that goal, I don't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about the goal. I wake up every single day asking myself, what can I do today that inches me a little bit closer to that goal? And I also use it as a filter for most of my professional decisions. Is doing this or saying yes to this going to take me closer to that $1 Million Speakers Club? And if the answer is yes, then I usually do it. If the answer is no, then I at least give some thought to whether or not it's worthy of doing and investing my time in. So that's one goal. And then I look at the books as something that helps supplement that. One of my primary sources of speaking referrals is the actual book. Somebody reads Raise Your Game or Sustain Your Game and then reaches out to my team and says, hey, can Alan come deliver this message in person to our company? And I also enjoy the book because it's scalable and it's a way to put a tremendous amount of information in something that's rather digestible. I recognize that most of the people that I interact with on social media aren't going to pay me to come speak. And I still want to be of service to those folks. I still want to light their candles and do things that add value to them. So the book is a much lower price point, but a way to share these things that I've learned and people have taught me. And, that's one of my guiding mantras is a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. So I always want to be a steward to pay this stuff forward. So, I look at somebody like Jim Rohn, who you mentioned before, who I've never had a chance to meet, but his work has had a profound impact on my life's philosophy and my perspective. And if I can be that person for someone else, I would take a tremendous amount of honor in doing that. So yeah, the books are kind of a way to help scale that message and provide hopefully useful and beneficial content. But one distinct difference is, like, I don't have a goal for a certain number of books being sold or to make any type of bestseller list. I don't worry about any of that because that stuff is 100% outside of my control. All I can do, the only part I have control over is writing the best book I'm capable of, which I did at that time, and doing everything I can to share the message of the book to hopefully pique interest. And a conversation like this is a great example of doing that. I don't control how many people buy the book. I have a little bit more control on the speaking side, where if I'm very proactive in my relationship building and I'm proactive in adding value to others, I'm confident that I can find 50 companies per year to pay a $20,000 speaking fee to bring me in to speak. So while it's not guaranteed, I have a little bit more control over that side of the equation.
No, I love everything that you just said there. And a huge thing that you mentioned was, having control, right? You can't control the controllables, basically. And when I changed my perspective and I went with that route, it's literally changed my life in a way, because if something happens and I can't control it, then I don't stress. I don't try to get like myself too worried about that, because I can't control that, right? And another thing you mentioned there was about giving. You give a lot to people, you give your time to people. I know that you're highly, talked about. And Jim Rohn also says, the first point of receiving is giving, right? And which is what you're doing, which is amazing. And I really respect that a lot. And I want to touch on this as well. I forgot to mention it earlier. Can we talk about burnout? Because when I heard you talk to Ed, you've done a podcast with Ed Millett, which was absolutely amazing. And you mentioned that burnout is when you don't enjoy, is it when you don't enjoy the process, when there's no meaningfulness, that's when you get burnt out? Am I correct there? Or?
You're right on the right path. Absolutely. Burnout comes from misalignment between, putting in a lot of hours and making a lot of sacrifices, but you're not finding meaning in the work that you're doing. So if you're working 60 or 70 hours a week and you're making sacrifices like missing your kid's soccer game, or, not being able to see your wife in the morning, if you're doing that and you don't find your work meaningful, you don't find your work fascinating, you don't find your work making a contribution, you don't find your work in alignment with your core values, if those things are starting to splinter apart, then you're at risk for burnout. So it's not just the long hours. I mean, we all know someone that works 60, 70 hours a week, but absolutely finds tremendous purpose and meaning in their work. They're making a massive contribution to the greater good, either to their clients and customers or to society at large. They find their work stimulating and fascinating and interesting. Their work is in perfect alignment with their belief system and core values. Those people aren't at risk of burnout because they find that meaning and that love for their work. So that's really where the two things come together.
Amazing. No, yeah, thank you so much, Alan. Honestly, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you do for everyone, all the messages that you have out there. What I'll do, guys, I'll leave Alan's YouTube channel. Make sure you go and check the story of meeting Kobe Bryant, which is absolutely amazing. I'll leave the links to your book down below as well, Alan, so people can go and check that out. I've recommended it to all my team, so hopefully they get on board as well and listen to it. But yeah, I just want to say thanks again. Is there anything that, if there's one thing that you'd want to say to the listeners out there, is there anything that you'd want to say at all?
Yeah, the last thing I'll leave them with is, regardless of how old you are, regardless of where you work or what industry you're in or where you fall on an org chart at your company, choose to view yourself as a leader. Being a leader is a choice. It's not because someone's given you position of authority. It's not because you have a certain title. Leadership is choosing to pour into others and to help others get somewhere where they might not be able to get on their own, and choose to view yourself and choose to go through life looking at yourself as a leader. And when you do that, you will add more value to everywhere you go and everyone you interact with. And that's what will open up new doors and opportunities, for you. So choose to view yourself as a leader. And this was so much fun. I really appreciate all of your kind words and praise, and I'm really glad we got connected. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alan. Thank you.